Hi, good day, everyone. This is Hanney of Critical Faculty. Today, I've got David Silverman with me here again. Hello, David. How are you?
I am well, Hanney. Thanks for having me back on the show. Good to be here.
Fantastic. I mean, we were chatting already before going live, and I guess we'll take the conversation into um, the tables and the chairs of our audiences here and continue the conversation from where we left last time about racism and how difficult and complex that situation is. So you were telling me your perspective
I
on
know. I forgot what I was
some.
going to say, though. What was I saying? Give me more of what I was saying.
So we were chatting about how racism might occur to you as a thought, and a thought can occur to you, and it's not a crime until you act upon it.
And the important thing is that the important point that I was making, and it's not a popular point, but it's a true point, okay? And that is that bigotry and racism can't be against the law, okay? We have to allow people to be bigoted. We have to allow freedom of thought. Freedom of thought means you can be bigoted. You can be wrong. You can be an asshole. You can be rude. You can be a racist. We have to allow it. It's not freedom if we don't. And it's tyranny. It's thought crime. So if we're talking about, like, Henny, you were talking about, people of an older generation are all racists to a degree. They all have racist thoughts here. That can't be a marker for being a bad person. It can't. It can be a marker for being a bad person if they act on it, because no person in today's world knows that it's okay to act on racism. Hi, skeptic. But it does mean that we have to allow. We still have to allow it to happen. A person, I was having a discussion with, and this is the point that I was going to make before we went live. I was having a discussion about systemic racism with a Black Lives Matter supporter, and and I said to her that we have systemic anti-racism in this country. We have the systemic issue that we have, the systemicness of we have is anti-racism, because every place, every entity in the government has anti-racism policies and penalties for acting out your racism, and it's taken very seriously. And she says that just pushes it underground. And I was like, that's exactly right. That's exactly what it should do. It should push it underground and keep it underground. I think what she was really worrying about was getting it out. And this is a mentality that we have to worry about, because we've gone from this place of actions to a place of literal thought crimes. 1984 Orwellian thought crimes situation, where if you harbor the thoughts, you're a criminal. That's a crime, and you deserve punishment for those thoughts. And it's a very scary place that I do think we're going to. I do think we're heading in that direction, and it's one of the reasons that I opposed the Biden campaign this year, was because I believe thought crimes are becoming real, and the idea that that systemic racism might actually not be true is something that can get you fired right now. And systemic racism isn't real, at least not anymore. Not in this country. It's not a substantial impediment to a Black person's life today. No, it's not. And if they stand, and for every Black person that you can find that says yes, it is, I can find you another Black person that says no, it isn't.
Yeah.
Because unlike what Joe Biden says, Black people are not a monolith.
Yeah, it's crazy. My problem personally with this one here is I'm addressing now the atheists or the non-religious people here who would criticize Christianity and say, hey, you can't really criminalize thoughts because thoughts are involuntary. You can't choose what you're thinking, right?
Correct.
Let's say you've got some wrong thoughts. That is not the way to address them. The way to address them is not by telling you you can't think these or you should not think these. We all have our journeys. We all think some good things and some bad things, and it's our journey for us. So, for example, if you're a person who grew up in a small village and never get to see the outsider too much and never seen the outside too much, you tend to think that your family, your next of kin, is the right people to speak with, and these are your people, and you start thinking that way. It might be the wrong way to think like that, because it will actually sort of limit your options in life. It's not the right way. It's not very expansive. It's not very big picture.
Right.
However, the way to address that is not by telling you, sorry, you can't have these thoughts, not under my watch. You're going to go to jail for them. They're going to go through a journey.
Or you're going to be shamed for them.
Right.
So a lot of people on the left don't see the connection here, okay? And they really need to see that we are literally talking about, people being allowed to be bigots, people being allowed to be racists. It's not popular. I don't agree with it. I'm not supporting racism, but I am supporting a racist's right to exist, as we all should. And if we don't, then we are literally saying what Hanney and I are talking about. We are literally saying, okay, we're talking about thought crimes. We're literally, that's the issue, because bigotry is all relative, right? Everybody knows that bigotry is all relative. It goes in all sorts of different directions. It's not just Boolean. It's not that this is a racist and this is not a racist. Everything's on a sliding scale. Everybody is relative. So if we have thought crimes for relative thoughts, that's what we're talking about. It's just going to be a matter of who's not racist enough.
Right. And David, you got to address it as well properly. I mean, if you want to get rid of racism once and for all, you can't get rid of something by banning it. You know how when you ban something, it becomes so popular. Drugs is an example. So banning isn't the solution. But
No.
if you have people, you just want to explain to people why racism is actually scientifically and intellectually incorrect.
Right.
By, for example, if there's a certain race that's committing some crimes or not doing the right thing, that particular race needs to start showing up and taking responsibility of their own actions and become a good example. You can show scientifically that people of different colors have same average IQ, have the same tendencies, and through science and through conversation, this is how you're going to reverse the situation, not through banning.
That's right. And when you say certain races, I want to be more specific. I want to get into a little bit of nuance here, okay? Because I think when you're talking about certain races doing more crime, you're talking about, I don't think you're talking about the black race. I think you're talking about the African-American culture. I think the crime rate that you're speaking of, when we're looking at crimes across races, we need to differentiate that between crimes across cultures. There's a difference, of course, between black people and African-American culture, African Americans within the African-American culture. And there's a big difference between the performance of black people inside that culture and the performance of black people from outside that culture. And so I just want to stress the nuance here, because I don't want you to be called a racist. Because it's not about the black race when we're talking about crime. It's about the African-American culture, which is fixable, which has facets to it that are supportive of criminals. They are the facets that are negative toward education, negative toward a family. This is going to affect that culture, and that is absolutely a place, Hanney, where that culture needs to step up and fix itself. I am here to help. I'm here to advise, but we have to understand that there's a lot of stuff that's inherent in that culture that is just not our problem. It's their problem, and they need to fix it. I mean, I'm on their side. I want them to fix it, but black on black crime is not a matter of white oppression. Black suicide is not a matter of the white guy holding them down. This is stuff that's internal to their culture. If we're talking about, black on black homicide is through the roof compared to any other homicide in the same economic category. It's through the roof. That's not white oppression.
Yeah.
There's something in that culture, not in the race, because outside that culture, I hate to say it, black people are more normal as far as that's concerned. It's inside that culture. And I was listening to, I had an aha moment because I like to listen to black conservatives recently. Black conservatives are a funny group. They're very, very smart. And they're, well, I'm not supposed to say they're eloquent, but they are. And they, at the same time, they get really religious on a dime, right? So they go from making a lot of sense to talking absolute gobbledygook, but that's okay. I just like it. But, I was listening to Officer Tatum and I was listening to Candace Owens, and I had a little aha moment because Officer Tatum says something along the lines of, I'm going to get a master's degree, or I got my master's degree. And when I got my master's degree, I didn't get a party. But when my cousin got out of jail for 15 years, the family threw him a welcome back party. Why doesn't the black community support education as much as it supports its convicts? And then Candace Owens comes on in a different show and comments on the same thing and says, do you think the Jews would have a party for a convict coming home? No, it's just the black people, just the African American that do this. And wow, this was an amazing aha moment for me because I was raised Jewish. I was raised Jewish, and I went to Brandeis, which is a Jewish college. So I know a lot of Jews, and I know a lot about Judaism. And there is no way that they would have a welcome home for prison party for somebody in any Jewish culture sect that I know of. Somebody once asked me if my mother would throw me a party if I got back from prison. And my response was that my mother would punish me more when I got back from prison. And so, you've kind of started me on this little rant of mine that I guess I feel strongly about because, I want to help, and I want the effects of systemic racism of the past to be completely erased. I do not believe that the way to do that is by more discrimination. I believe the way to do that is by free enterprise. But I also believe very, very strongly that the way to do that is not by the African American community blaming its problems on other people. If there is systemic racism, I am fully on board to fight it out because fuck systemic racism. If there's any place where racists in the system can hurt people of color with their racism, I want to stomp that out too and make sure that doesn't happen. I do that with policies, not prohibiting thought, but prohibiting behavior. And then everybody has a free life. But if they're going to ignore the big issues, the big glaring issues that they know about, because I'm not the one saying this. I mean, the conservative black people are screaming this stuff. And they're right. I'm just echoing them. I'm echoing Candace Owens. I'm echoing Officer Tatum. I'm echoing Anthony Bryan Logan right now. This is not new. It's not new. They're yelling it, and they're yelling it from within their own community, but they're not doing it.
But if I may take you, David, on thought experiment here and reverse the roles. Imagine a world where it was the other way around. It was black people enslaved the white people at some point. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to show that this is not intrinsic to skin color. It's intrinsic to the vicious cycle certain group of people were subjected to, and it produces certain outcomes. So if you're white and you're enslaved and you had poor access to health, education, and all these sort of things for centuries, what do you expect? You're going to expect a group of people that a little bit self-destructive, a bit of victimhood, a bit of I feel feeling resentful towards the other people. They want to get away with murder if they can get away, because they feel hard done by already. So you've got all this reservoir of emotions, of negative emotions. You're going to end up with that situation. It doesn't matter where you're from or where you are. You're going to end up in that kind of situation. So I think both you and I would agree it's just not intrinsic to skin color. It's probably something to do with the history and the culture of treatment, and there is a way to get out of it.
Well, yeah, of course it's not. It has nothing to do with skin color or race. It has to do, and everybody has their own autonomy. Okay, yeah, you're in a catch-22. The African American culture is a product of past racism, is past systemic racism, and that's I think it's an unarguable fact. But at the same time, now this generation, these are autonomous people. Okay, they can read, they can think, and they can, because what you just said was a misnomer. Okay, if white people had been enslaved, well, my generation wasn't enslaved. Okay, and I don't feel the oppression of hundreds of years. I don't feel the oppression of thousands of years of oppression because everybody hates the Jews for the past few thousand years. I don't feel that oppression. I feel the oppression that I have felt during my lifetime and nothing more. And so even bringing up the millennia of oppression against the Jews, if I were to do that and to say, and to bolster my argument, and the Jews have been Jews, I want this because the Jews have been held down for thousands of years. And I feel that. That's crap, right? That's bullshit. That's obviously me trying to use the trauma of the past for my personal gain. You don't feel anything except that which you have felt in your lifetime. And so to look at these people, I understand that the culture was created in the Jim Crow era. I get that. But that's long over. And the Civil Rights Act has been in place for a generation. And our system, which used to be racist, is now fully anti-racist, fully stocked with anti-racist policies. And if anybody finds a place where there is no anti-racist policies, I'm on your side to change that and add that. And if anybody finds an anti-racist policy that is not being enforced, I'm on your side to fix that. But let's realize that we have gone from a racist system to an anti-racist system. Our system right now is vehemently neutral. And that's what we should expect. We should expect a system which says, we used to be racist. We do not allow that shit anymore. That's what we should do. That's systemic anti-racism. Dr. Roland Fryer, an African-American Harvard professor, did a major study, which I've read, which looked at Black people getting shot versus white people in like-for-like situations across multiple cities, across multiple years. And he found that even though cops are more likely to rough up a Black person, in like-for-like situations, they're 24% less likely to shoot a Black person than they are to shoot a white person. This is, again, by a Black Harvard professor who did this fantastic study. Why is that happening? Because the cops that are roughing up the Black people more often, that's bigotry. But the fact that they're shooting Black people 24% less often is the systemic anti-racism that shuts that shit down very effectively. If I'm wrong on that, tell me and I'll fight with you to help fix it. But what we have now is what we should have, which is a system which recognizes our racist base by not by giving prejudice, not by giving bigotry, not by responding with more bigotry, but by saying, okay, we are going to penalize the hell out of any racist that acts on racism in this system. Everybody gets a free shot here. And we're going to put these policies everywhere, bar none. And we're going to have ourselves a systemically anti-racist country. And one of the reasons that I so greatly disrespect Donald Trump is his failure to enunciate this, his failure to talk about this, his failure to just shut down Black Lives Matter by saying, where is the racism? Show me and I'll fix it. Where is it? Show me. He didn't.
Yeah.
And so if we were a system, so we have this system, okay, and this system has poor people and rich people and all the races, and through the systemic racism of the past, there's a lot of black people in the poor section. And what we need to do is take away all the racism. So if we take away all the racism, which we did, and we filled our system with anti-racism policies, which we did, that's what we have. A system which has the remains of that systemic anti-racism, which no longer, with the systemic racism, which no longer exists, a system now permeated with systemic anti-racism, and that's going to allow people to flourish evenly. There's no more racism in our system.
Right.
And for anybody to look at our system and say, look, the black people are still poor, therefore the only explanation is that we have systemic racism, is just, I mean, it's just myopic.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I'm with you on this. If you manage to transfer and transform establishments to be neutral and to give people equal footing in every aspects of life, while allowing individuals to be wrong, and go through a journey, a life journey, and the only way to reverse this is through a dialogue, an intellectual conversation, and a scientific conversation. That's all fine. However, I can also see the catch-22, because, for example, you get the Muslim or Islamic situation where, as you know, belief inform actions, and actions have consequences, as some would say. So it all starts with a thought. The person who was going to commit a terrorism act in sort of Islamic terms, it all started with a thought. And what do you do then? Do you allow them to think that way, and then wait for it to become an action, or kill it in its sort of cradle, or what do you do? This is a bit problematic, especially on the Islamic front.
You inoculate, right? That's what you do. You inoculate in advance. You don't let those thoughts form in the first place by implanting an idea of skepticism and knowledge of the universe at a young age. You can't punish thoughts, okay? You can't punish thoughts, but you can prescribe. You can, produce counter arguments. You can defeat the thoughts. Thoughts can be defeated
with thought.
Punishments. I mean, so I would, I would, go after the education in Islam, and of course that all goes to the ex-Muslims. I want to talk a little bit about that, because if we're talking about Islam, if we're talking about how we're going to fix that, that's not going to be done without the help of ex-Muslims. And I mean, I've got to say, I don't know if you ever met anybody that you actually think is a hero, but I've met very few of them, and almost all of them have been ex-Muslims. And these are the people who risk their lives. These are the people who risk their lives to stop those thoughts from happening in other people. These are the people who actually do the hard work to stop those thoughts from expanding into something in other people, because they are inoculating people. I went to an ex-Muslim convention in London some time ago, and I met these amazing people. These amazing people blew me away. what they had done, what they had risked, what they had lost, just so that they could tell the truth, just so they could spread the information, just so that people like the people you mentioned would hear it and not go crazy. I was in awe of these people, and I hope that people out there will support the ex-Muslim community in a great big way. You know, I will tangent one more time, if you don't mind, Hanney. I will tangent one more time to say that as wokeism has infected the atheist movement has pushed out the ex-Muslims. And this is something that I strongly oppose. And I hope that the people who are watching this will support organizations that support the ex-Muslims and support the ex-Muslims themselves, because that's where this is all going to happen. All of this Islam reform is going to happen from the ex-Muslims, from the people who left Islam, the people who know the Quran backwards and frontwards, the people who know, the people who know all the details, that can speak the language. And I think that we really need to support them. And I don't think they're getting the support anymore from the atheist movement. And so, shout out to the ex-Muslim organizations out there. I'm thinking Ex-Muslims of North America and the Council for Ex-Muslims. These are good organizations of heroes that need your support.
Yeah. Well, I've got a comment here. Is Bruce is asking which atheist movement pushed out ex-Muslims, but I'll share with you quickly, David, my experience here in Australia. But the pushback I'm getting is actually really from the leftist sort of lobbies. Because every time I criticize Islam as a doctrine, somehow they keep conflating this to criticism of the people. And whenever I confront them and say, look, have you ever read the Quran? Do you understand anything about the doctrine of Islam? They push back and they straw man you, and they'll tell you, these people are oppressed in their countries. Let them be. Most Muslim people are.
That's racism.
Yeah.
Muslims aren't in countries. Muslims aren't in countries. Okay, Muslims are everywhere. Islam is not a race.
Yeah, but what they're trying to do, David. Yeah, I agree. What they're trying to do is you try to talk about ideas and doctrine, but they keep taking you to the side of the people, so you can start making mistakes. And it's like,
there's this racism, and you can see how this works, okay, Hanney, because you've got this wokeism. The wokeism is very pro-Islam, or I should say it's very anti-Islam. They don't want to be Islamophobic. So they're pro-Islam, but they don't recognize that Islam is not a race. So it's if you're anti-Islam, you're a racist, okay? Yeah. And so they're protecting what they view as brown people, without realizing that you could be Muslim and Asian and Muslim and white. And so there's a racism inside the racism accusation. It's kind of fun.
Do you remember Ben Affleck, that episode with Bill Maher and Sam Harris?
That's racist.
It's like you're saying. He said it's like you're saying you're dirty Jew. He completely got it wrong.
It's racist is. I'm so tired of the word. I have taken the position that racism is a pejorative word. It's an offensive thing to call somebody. I am no longer accepting being called a racist. If you call me a racist, I'm going to tell you that you owe me an apology, or you can back your shit up. But if you call me an asshole, you're going to owe me an apology. And if you call me a racist, you're going to owe me an apology. And I think everybody needs to say that. I think everybody needs to say, no. You don't just get to throw that poisonous word at me and give me the choices of saying, yes, I'm sorry, or saying nothing. Yeah. The answer to, we have to stop accepting being called racists. I am not Archie Bunker. Yeah. I have spent decades doing my thing to promote diversity. And I don't want to be called a racist.
David,
you know what?
Yeah.
I think we should. I think we need to fight that back, because it's like this weapon that's thrown around, and we cower. We white people. I'm Jewish, but I guess I pass as white for this discussion. We cower at the word racist, and I think the response is, "Oh yeah, why don't you back your shit up? Tell me what's racist, and we'll discuss it. And if you don't prove it, you owe me an apology." Just like if I were to call you an asshole, just if I were to call you a thief. If racism is a crime, if thought is a crime, then you got to stand your. I mean, I'm tired of this whole narrative that there is no proper response to being called a racist other than say, yes, thank you for calling me a racist. No, sometimes the person calling you a racist is full of shit. Sometimes the people calling you a racist are liars. Sometimes the people calling you a racist are wrong. And I'm not going to accept that. People say to me, well, why don't you reflect on your behavior if they're calling you a racist? I did. I always do. And I'm just tired of it. I mean, I have been called a racist simply because I don't want to be called a racist. Not wanting to be called a racist doesn't make me a racist. Having a bigotry against a people of a race is what makes a person a racist. And I think it's time that we have to start standing up to this. Robin DiAngelo was wrong, and I think we have to take a stand on this, because Joe Biden won the election, and the religious far left, or I should say the wokeists far left, they are going to be very energized in their attempts to cure racism by defunding the police, or cure racism by calling math and science racist, or cure racism by eliminating advanced placement classes. Whatever they want to do to cure racism, other than actually address the fact that racism isn't a real factor in today's society. It's not.
You know, David, I always thought about, okay, well, what is the real reason? Why do we still think, okay, well, racism it should be encouraged? And to me, it's down to one very little situation here, which is you can't really, or there is no very little point of criticizing that you cannot choose. So it's your race, it's your sexual orientation. These are things that you're born with, and therefore, criticizing them intrinsically for what they are wrong. However, religions, you can opt out of a religion. Religion is an idea. It's not intrinsic to your being. It's something that you're born with, maybe a little bit difficult and nuanced to get rid of, but it's at the end of the day, it's something that you can opt out of, just like me. But on the racism side, I don't know. Are you a fan of the Family Guy? Do you watch Family Guy?
I haven't watched it recently, but I used to watch it a lot.
Right. You know Cleveland, the black dude there is so funny.
Yeah.
The voiceover is by a white man, right? He does lots of voices. And recently he's been moved from being cast, as well as I believe Apu from The Simpsons, which is Hank Azaria, he's doing the Indian dude. And what my fear here is of, I live in Australia, and we have Italians and Greeks and different nationalities. And in the 70s, there used to be a banter, different cultures taking the piss out of each other in a funny way, sitcom stand-ups, and they give it to each other. They give it and take it, and it's all fun and games, and they all have a beer together. What is this going to end up being? We're going to live in a generation with devoid of sense of humor, and we can't even laugh at ourselves.
Yes. This is helicopter parenting. This is the participation trophy generation. They can't take anything. They can't be laughed at ever. They can't be criticized, and you can't criticize other people because you might hurt their feelings. Yes, I mean, it's a great a nice little coincidence. Yesterday, I was on YouTube, and I watched this fantastic clip from the 1970s Saturday Night Live. It was a clip between Chevy Chase and Richard Pryor.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And in this fantastic clip, Chevy Chase is interviewing Richard Pryor, and they're doing a word association game. And Chevy Chase, in his awesome deadpan look, he's throwing out racist terms at Richard Pryor and asking for a reaction. And he's getting worse and worse terms, okay? And Richard Pryor's reaction is getting, and it is the funniest shit on the planet, okay? It just does not, people who are listening to this, who know this clip, know exactly what I'm talking about. And this would not live at all today. And this kind of humor, and it's funny, and it's not hurtful, and it causes no harm. And
David, it's one way. I mean, about Wesley Snipes' Woody Harrelson movie, White Men Can't Jump.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, just change the title of that movie to Black Men Can't Do Whatever. That will not fly.
No, and that's why this, we really have to look at the myth of the idea. Again, Robin DiAngelo is wrong. Racism goes in both directions. A lot of people on the far left are of the opinion that racism only goes from whites down, for lack of a better word, from whites out. And that nobody outside of the white race can be racist. And everybody inside the white race can be racist or is racist. And I think that opens up such a stupid floodgate of protection of racism from other races hating white people. It completely legitimizes anti-white hatred, anti-white racism from other races. And I think that whole that double standard that you just mentioned with White Men Can't Jump, White Men Can't Jump is an old movie, but it certainly is true that there are that we're seeing. I mean, we're seeing different behaviors for different groups of people. Now we're seeing open discrimination against whites and Asians and Jews, just to even up numbers that can't be evened up naturally, that aren't being evened up naturally. And they aren't being evened up naturally because why? Circle back around, that African-American culture has a lot of poison in it. And that anti-education culture and that anti-family culture is dragging down these people. And in order to solve it, instead of fixing that, the guilty white people are literally instituting anti-white and anti-Asian and anti-Jew racism in our system. We just had, in California, they just defeated an amendment to the Constitution. And I want to make sure that I get this right, because this failed, but it did get 44% of the vote, okay, to discontinue, to remove the restriction to discriminate on the basis of race. It just got 40% of the vote to remove the prohibition against discrimination on the basis of race, so that they can discriminate against whites and Asians and Jews in favor of blacks and Latinos, not so much Latinos, in favor of blacks, because the blacks are not performing as well as everybody else in like-for-like situations. Therefore, it must be racism that's holding back the African-American community. It's all backwards. And one of your commenters just said, "Yeah, racism is used to shut other people down," and that's exactly what it is. It's shutting people down.
Yeah. It's getting very difficult, really, and to pin it down. And it's not genuine now. It's being used as a strategy and a weapon to politically. You can completely ruin somebody's career by obviously all what you have to do is just point the finger racist, Obviously, everybody's on that bandwagon, so it's becoming very, very counterproductive. But I want to change the subject a little bit towards that Islamic terrorism that's been happening in Europe of late. We've got obviously the two decapitation incidents in France, one in Paris and the other one is in Nice, and then followed by the one in Vienna, in close to the Jewish synagogue. And looks like Europe is reacting finally.
Europe is reacting. I'm afraid of the reaction. I think Europe is being instigated, but I think it has to react. Islam is a problem, okay? It's not racism to say Islam is a problem. It's not bigotry to say Islam is a problem. And it is not wrong to say Islam is a problem. And it is Islam. It's not a cult. It's not a poor section. It's Islam. Yes, there are lots and lots of wonderful, peace-loving Muslims out there, but Islam is really toxic. And if it's not subverted, this is going to happen. And, you know, it has been happening for 1,500 years. And, you know, once again, going back to the atheist movement, which is silent on this stuff, right? And again, we can't be silent on this stuff. When these beheadings came out, the atheist movement said nothing. I mean, Atheist Republic did, Atheist for Liberty did, Atheist Alliance International did. But, I mean, it's just ignored. And it's ignored at our own peril. Look,
it's almost funny, David. It depends on what's your background before you become an atheist. So, you know, you mentioned Atheist Republic. That's obviously Armin, who's an ex-Muslim.
Right.
So he's obviously want to highlight that. But if you are an ex-Christian or ex-Jew and who became sort of an atheist, you sort of affiliate incorrectly Christianity and Judaism to be white men religion. And you know, Islam is for the brown people, and you know these people are hard done by anyway. So maybe we just treat them a little bit more carefully, which is very condescending.
It's very condescending. It's racist, and it's what the wokeists do. Okay, that's exactly what the wokeists do, and it's dangerous and stupid because Islam is a problem. It is still a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem. It's going to grow into a worse problem unless we do something about it. And, you know, we must raise our voices. We must raise our fists. We must, you know, propel the ex-Muslim communities up. We must fight. And I have low hopes that we will. And I don't know what's going to happen, honey. I mean, I don't think we've seen the last beheading. I think that they're doing it for a reason. I think we're going to see more and more of it, and I think we're going to see an issue. And I don't know what to do about it. And you know, I'm hoping that the American people, you know, stand behind the ex-Muslim community so that we can fight this together.
Do you reckon it's a time thing? I mean, Judaism is about 3,500 to 3,000 years old, and we pretty much know anybody who sort of have the knowledge. Even Jews in Israel itself are mostly secular, and a lot of them are atheists, and you know, they're cultural. They understand it's part of the culture, but they don't believe really what's written unless you're from a very, very small minority, the Hasidic Jews and stuff like that. Christianity went through the same stuff a few centuries ago. And now it's a lot more less sort of harmful, or you know, in a way, you know, at least in terms of action and violence. But Islam, being the youngest of the three brother Karamazovs, is going through the exact same stuff that Europe was going through probably 4 or 5 centuries ago. Only problem with Islam, David, I'm not sure if you know about that, but the Holy Scripture in Christianity and Judaism, it's stuff that is inspired by God, but written by men. So people can say, well, you know, I think this is meant to read that way, not that way, and that sort of stuff. Quran is supposed to be the literal unaltered and unalterable word of God. It's exactly written by the hands of God, even before the creation of man. And he cannot change one single letter. What do you do with a doctrine like this? How can you reform this?
Oh, you interpret it differently, and you stress different passages. Just like every other religion, Islam is absolutely open to interpretation. It just says that it's not, and you can see the hard facts of this by this unchanged, unyielding text being the forerunners of many, many different sects of Islam, including very religious people who are just progressive, normal. I don't want to use progressive, but modern, normal people.
Like Sufi Muslims are quite spiritual, yeah.
Yeah. So the idea that the Quran is unaltered and unalterable is hype. Okay. You can all because it's trying to give itself legitimacy, but the reality is, the truth is that there are lots of places where for instance, the Quran self contradicts itself, because of course Muhammad went through different stages in life, so he's more violent in one stage than the other, and so he says things that are contradictory, that can both be true, but you can stress one over the other. Okay. How do you do it? You do it the same way. I mean, if you look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, okay, no one's altering the Old Testament. The Old Testament says if you pick up sticks on the Sabbath, you deserve to be stoned to death. Okay, that's still in there, but we all ignore it. All the Christians ignore it because all religion is cafeteria religion. Everybody makes up their own religion. Islam is no different. They can just ignore those phrases just as easily as everybody else ignores these phrases. And what has to happen is the communication and the education and the information has to get out there. Now, we have to be out there. We have to be promoting education and knowledge. That's how.
Yeah. It's very funny because Islam, I mean, I was in Egypt in the 80s and going to uni there. I went to university where 90% of the population there were female. It was a language school. Maybe in every 100 girls, only 1, 2, 3, or 4 may be covered. And the situation has reversed. I'm hearing now some good news that a lot of Egyptian ladies are removing the hijab, the covering, and is a lot more freedom at the moment, and they're trying to understand. So there is a bit of a movement that way. But at sometimes around the 90s to the early 2010, 2012, there was a big movement of Islamic radicalization. And so I don't know if you sense there's something that happened in those 20 years that triggered that. Is it the administration, the Iraq war? What you reckon has sort of triggered that sort of intense Islamization of the world?
I mean, wasn't it us funding the Afghanistan war against Russia? I thought it was that.
That would be, yeah.
Because we put so much money in there, and then the Islamic Revolution, when the Shah was overthrown and the Ayatollah Khomeini took over.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no expert on that question. I'm speculating. I'm no expert.
No, I think you're right.
I think it was the idea that we put a whole bunch of money into Afghanistan to help the forerunners of Al Qaeda defeat the Russians, and that was a long war that we funded heavily. I think. I'm sure your comments are going to. There's some history buffs.
No, I agree. I think it started political. Yeah.
Of course, it was political, and it's always about money, right? So I think a lot of money went there, and I think that's, as far as I understand, that's how this whole thing started.
I mean, this is always intriguing to me about the U.S. I mean, the U.S. started as one of the most secular countries on earth. You know, the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution is one of the best written in the world. The founding fathers seems to be deists at best. Maybe some of them were closet atheists.
Yeah.
Written this beautiful constitution, separated religion and state, and then you end up with communism competing with America, and you end up having in God we trust on the currency.
Yeah.
And they've done the same. So they almost use the people with God, like Muslims in Afghanistan, to combat those people without God in Russia. And that's how it started. It's like, okay, well, we have God on our side against the Gut mit uns again, on the buckle of the belt again, all back again. Well, what's happening?
That's right. Good analogy. That's exactly right. Gott mit uns. It's exactly the same analogy. Correct.
Why do people keep falling for it? I mean,
it works. It works. God is with us. Works. God is on our side. Works. Tribalism works. The ruler of our universe, who created a trillion stars, really wants the Patriots to win this football game, and it's people will believe that shit because it works. Brains are stupid, okay? Brains are complicated and stupid, and and they can force you to believe things that itself knows is a lie, and that's how,
So do you reckon it's a case of almost like sick cells? This is religion cells.
Well, it does sell. Well, eternity cells, okay? The afterlife cells, salvation cells, a controlling force cells, because it's in our genes to want all that to happen. It's in our DNA. This goes straight back to Selfish Gene, Richard Dawkins, one of the greatest books ever written, in my opinion. It goes back to the needs of these ideas to continue, and those ideas. I mean, those ideas are innate. We all want to live forever. Everybody fears death because it's been bred into us. Everybody wants to be nurtured and wants to be protected. That's in us also. So a God protecting us with a plan, and is in control, even when it appears that we're not in control. At least God is in control, or this God or that God, or it's a great cell, and it's in our genes. The only reason every atheist out there has surpassed that for one reason or another, because, it was, pardon me, again, going back to Dawkins, if a prehistoric man was walking through a field and he heard a rustle in the bushes, he could think it was a tiger, or he could think it was the wind. If he thought it was the tiger and ran, and it was the tiger, he might live. If he thought it was a tiger and it was the wind, he would run and still be fine. So if he didn't think it was the tiger, if he thought it was the wind and it was a tiger, of course he was lunch. So fear of the unknown and anthropomorphizing things, giving agency to another thing, is in our genes. We've been bred to believe that rustle is a tiger. We've been bred to see agency where that thing is rustling. That's the same reason why we see pictures in the sky, and that's the same reason why we hope and expect that the sun rises for a reason, and that reason is the deity.
But it's almost like a fastidious organ in my understanding right now, is that those things, those notions that tend to be beneficial early on, are no longer. Actually, as a matter of fact, I think they're holding us back. We can now find out what's happening, or what's the source of the sound. It was very good idea in terms of risk analysis back then, because you have very little mean of finding out what the reason for the sound. But to keep that particular feature, it's almost like having that sort of tail that we no longer have, and that bone sticking out, or the things that the relics of our past still sort of lurking about. But there's actually no use for them anymore. Actually, as a matter of fact, they're holding us back. Maybe it's time to get rid of that fear, or that phobia now, I call it.
Words to live by, my friend.
Yeah. Now, David, I understand you've got dinner plans. How much time we got for?
I have budgeted 4 to 5 today, my friend. So I
Okay.
do have to go because I do have a date.
Yeah, no. Okay. Well, let me finish up with this last couple of bits and pieces. Probably will take us 5 minutes to address, and
Sure.
I'll like you to enjoy your dinner.
Okay.
Identity politics. Do you think it's wise in this day and age to write up policies that are designed for certain groups of people, as opposed to just the population of your nation?
No, look. No, identity politics sucks, and bigotry sucks, and racism sucks, and it sucks in all directions. And to have policies which, see, the problem in America, again, going back to this box, okay, we've got our left and our right, and we've got our rich and our poor, and we've got our poor are mostly black because of systemic racism in the past, which no longer exists, but they're still poor. What do we do to fix this system? Look at it, okay? It's a system that used to be racist, but it's no longer racist. Right now, it's systemically anti-racist, but there is a lot of remnants of that in the poor. We've got a lot of black people in the poor community and a lot of also whites and other races in the poor community as well. What do we do? The solution to this box that I'm holding in front of you is not let's add more racism and push more of these folks into the bottom and push these folks up to the top and ignore the meritocracy. That's just going to make the problem worse. That's just going to add to the racial insensitivity that's happening. The right thing to do is to look at the problem as it is and see what it is. Not a racist system, a classist system, a system that substantially limits the ability for poor people to get unpoor. Mm-hmm. That's the problem that we have. If we are solving a racist system, we're not solving the correct problem. We have to solve a classist system. So if we have these identity politics that say, okay, I'm only going to help one section of this system, that's just bringing in more bigotry. That's just more racism. And it's also, it's racism in a couple of different ways because black people don't need it, okay? The black poor people don't need anything that the white poor people don't need or need, okay? They all need the same things. Black people are equally capable of becoming non-poor as white people are. And to say otherwise is racism on your part. So taking a non-racist approach, looking at the system, saying, okay, we got a lot of poor people and we've got a lot of poor people staying poor now. We've got to help the poor people out, putting in systems that help the poor. Maybe universal basic income is a good idea. Maybe universal health care is a good idea. Maybe universal daycare for poor people is a great idea. Maybe free birth control is a great idea. Let's do things to help the poor community and not worry about the color of their skin.
Fantastic, David. Look, I'd like to thank you very much. I always enjoy our conversation and your perspective. You're a little bit different than the rest of the atheist community out there because you're very unique. You've got unique perspectives. You've got individual perspectives, and you don't have a problem with saying, I'm not quite sure about this. Let me think about this. Let it simmer for a bit, and I find that quite refreshing.
Thank you. I appreciate coming on the show, Hanney. I appreciate you having me on again. For anybody who wants to find me, my YouTube channel is Firebrand for Good. My most recent video is the witness from the Rebecca Vitzman hearing so I had false Me Too allegations, and one of them went to court. The witness from that court hearing turned and came on my show to talk about how she participated in my downfall. That's on my Firebrand for Good channel now. My Twitter is Mr. Atheist Pants. And thank you, Hanney, for having me on. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, David. David, guys, David's links are in the bottom of the description of this particular video. I'd like to thank you very much, David. Enjoy your dinner, and don't get too naughty tonight.
Happy weekend, everybody. Take care.
Okay, bye. Thanks everybody for watching. You were with Hanney and David talking live about identity politics and the Islamic terrorism in Europe. We would like to say thank you very much, and we will see you again in probably tomorrow in an episode on critical faculty. See you later. Bye.